Let's now speak with Professor Christian Happy, who's the director ACEGID, that's African Center for Excellence for Genomics of Infectious Diseases, Redeemers University. Well, he might be in Douala, Cameroon, but he and his team are operating, of course, from here in Nigeria, and he joins us this evening on the program. It's great to have you, Prof. Quite a number of developments to explore this evening. Antimicrobial resistance and how it concerns COVID-19. There's also the talk about local manufacturing and development of vaccines, which the Secretary of State just referenced, plus an emerging trend in the global health scene, which you call One Health. But let's begin with this. Your name came up over the weekend when the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, was speaking about some of the achievements of Nigerian scientists in the fight against COVID. One, for leading the team that carried out that very first genome sequencing of the virus in Africa, and two, for the virus groundbreaking rapid test, which costs around $3, much less than a PCR test. So I'd like to begin on that note because, I mean, it piqued a lot of people's interests. Are we mass producing this, this rapid kit, maybe like the lateral flow tests, which they have in the UK and the rest? What's the state of that one?
Yeah, the test is different from the lateral flow that you have in the US. It's actually the very first nucleic acid rapid test. So which means that it's not looking at, the test is not picking antibodies or antigen. This test is picking, the DNA or the RNA of the virus, and is a very first of its kind. And simply because it's using a novel technology called gene editing, to identify something, the RNA or the DNA specifically to the COVID-19 RNA of the COVID-19 virus. And it's also picking specifically the variant. And this test is really one of its kind, again, simply because, it is something that is done at room temperature. You do not need any skill to do it. Imagine a pregnancy test. My grandmother in her home, in my village, would do it. And she doesn't need to be educated to do it. So it is really a test that we developed for, our people and for Africans, and really would not need cold chain, and it's as cheap as the Vice President mentioned. And clearly, we have really transformed the way, Africa should respond to this epidemic or to this pandemic by really bringing solutions that are revolutionary. And this test is definitely being produced, but not at a scale that we would have loved to. And we're already talking to partners and then talking to people that are really interested. And this is, where the private sector in Africa should come into investment, investing into it so that we can actually produce millions of these tests. We are still doing it pretty rudimentarily in my lab at Redeemers University in a day, but really at this point, we need to scale this up to a point whereby we can actually produce millions. Yes, some people have shown interest, but really we are not at a scale where, it's being manufactured and then mass produced yet.
Well, we'll certainly look forward to that. But the Vice President also referenced the development of a Nigerian anti-COVID vaccine. And I know you've said that Africans will perhaps be more comfortable with an African vaccine. We just heard the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, also speaking about manufacturing. So regarding development on the one hand and manufacturing on the other, where are we?
Well, as you listen to the Vice President, we had this COVID-19 vaccine candidate, that we produced as far back as September 2020. And the preclinical testing data were incredible. And we're glad to say that, yes, we did not have the resources to do the testing, in our country, but right now that testing is ongoing in the UK. And we're very proud of the fact that, with our collaborators at the University of Cambridge, we're changing the tide. And this is definitely, if the resources are available, this is going to be the very first Africa COVID-19 vaccine.
So let's talk about One Health, Prof. I know it's a term that a lot of people may be hearing for the first time, wondering, what is this about? But in the context of COVID-19, because I know One Health has ramifications across board, but particularly for COVID-19, I know there was this, inaugural meeting which was held weeks ago. How does this improve the efficiency and perhaps the effectiveness of our fight against COVID-19, One Health, that is?
Of course, the One Health going forward is not just, I mean, it is an approach that has been existing, but really have not been used in order to respond to epidemic and then to pandemics. And then the new, I mean, it is clear now that, if you want to fight a disease or an infectious disease, you can't just look at the human component of the disease. The human live in an ecosystem, and that ecosystem is made of human, animals, and then the environment. So, and then most of the diseases that do have pandemic potential actually spill over often from animals to human. So how do you do disease surveillance if you are focusing only on human? And that's why we're now proposing, the One Health approach, which means that you have to focus on human health, animal health, and the environment. And that way, we can basically look at the whole ecosystem and work better in order to respond. Because it is very possible, think about it in the context of COVID-19, that animals could actually be infected from humans. And then imagine what goes on in the animal. What will happen, for instance, if a virus that has been picked up by animal from human undergoes some changes in the animal and then comes back to human. And that's the reason why the One Health approach is very important. Let's look at animal health, let's look at human health, let's look at the environment. And that's exactly what is the concept of One Health.
So when you talk about animals and humans and ensuring that we monitor on both planes, not just focus on one, Ebola comes to mind. And, they talk about how Ebola came from humans to human beings. There's also, Lassa fever and the rest. So it sort of brings up that point. But for COVID-19, I recently came across some research. There's been talk about understanding where COVID-19 came from. And a lot of people had referenced, some erroneously, some without proof, that it came from animals. And just recently, some leaked emails came out referencing that might have been the case. But from a scientific point of view, I mean, you deal with facts and research. Have we hit a dead end, really, in trying to understand where COVID-19 came from?
Well, I mean, it is clear, I mean, from evidence and scientific evidence that is most likely would have come from animal and then spilled over to human. But there is really no evidence otherwise that is showing that, it came from a lab leak. It is not, I mean, nobody has provided such evidence, but there are abundant evidence on the other side demonstrating that this really is a spillover from animal reservoirs to human. So, and as such, that's what we tend to believe. But then remember that the WHO just created a scientific advisory group for, to investigate the origins of COVID and other infectious diseases, other pandemics. I am a member of that international scientific advisory group. We are 26 in the world. And then we really want to revisit, we're going to be revisiting that. And then obviously we will see. But I think the evidence, they're staring at us at the moment, the scientific evidence is, pointing toward the fact that it is a spillover from animal to human.
Professor Christian Happy, who joins us from Douala in Cameroon. By the way, he's there for a short assignment. He should be back soon. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. Happy to have you. I'm sorry I couldn't help that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
We'll go on a quick break now. When we return, we'll take a look at the COVID-19 response in Taraba State, plus what's happening in South Africa, where there are reports that the country is on the verge of a fourth wave. Do stay with us.